And so second wave feminism was much more influenced by, I would say, more kind of Marxist, socialist kind of philosophies that was like, let's actually disrupt the liberal order. This isn't good. And then also that's when feminism became really aligned with the pro-abortion movement, and then contraception and abortion basically became like the most important things for second wave feminists.
It makes sense according to their ideology, because if you wish to have the same opportunities as men, then you're going to have to do something about reproducing.
And if you look at like social, like Marxism, for example, let's see, like for example, in Simone de Beauvoir's book, The Second Sex, her like solution to sexism is basically a Marxist revolution, where you have the burden of childcare and rearing is basically handed off to the state.
God have mercy.
And men and women become these like interchangeable worker brothers.
What?
I mean, it's funny. That is exactly
what it looks like.
Right. And so that's, if you think about that kind of influencing how feminism developed in that second wave, it makes sense that basically the solution to women's oppression, femaleness was basically scapegoated for women's oppression. So in order for women to be truly liberated, they have to essentially be free from femaleness. That means free from the possibility of pregnancy. And then should a pregnancy occur, women need to be able to walk away from it just like a man can, right?
How horrible.
Yep.
To say that we're feminists, which means we have to do away with what's feminine.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things. So that's one of the critiques I make about feminism, is that there's actually this implicit male or this implicit masculine bias within it, because the ideal to which women are held is implicitly male, right? It's implicitly about, I think also part of the problem is that the subject or the view of the person in liberalism is the autonomous subject that's not interdependent, this kind of man is an island sort of idea. And I think the phenomenon of pregnancy really is incompatible with that. And you see that all the time just in the rhetoric in the abortion debates, right? Because the rhetoric is all about focusing on like the autonomy of women, or like my body, my choice. Well, the difficulty here, the tricky part of pregnancy is that there's two bodies and there's in one body, right? So our kind of autonomous rights-based language does not actually accommodate the reality of pregnancy very well. Anyway, so yes, I think that that's one of the central ironies of feminism.
I also noticed you changed a term in your budget work. You shifted from using the term mother to birthing people rather than mother. Can you help me get a good definition of birthing people?
Well, I'll check on the language there, but I think if we're talking about those who give birth, I think we're talking about, I don't know how else to explain it to you other than
I was a little taken back when I just read it and saw it, that the term mother was gone in spots and it was replaced with birthing people. And I didn't know if this was a direction that you were going, if there were shifts, if there are regulatory changes that are happening related to that, or what the purpose of that is.
I think it's probably, and again, I'd have to go back and take a look at the language that was used in the budget, but I think it simply reflects the work that's being done.
Oh, I definitely get that. I would only say the language is important always. We don't want to offend in our language. I get that. But would you at least admit calling a mom a birthing person could be offensive to some moms, that they don't want to get like a happy birthing person card in May, or, I mean, can you at least admit that that term itself could be offensive to some moms?
Senator, I'll go back and take a look at the terminology that was used, and I can get back to you. But again, if we're trying to be precise in the language that's used.
Mom's a pretty good word. That's worked for a while, and I think that's pretty precise as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Secretary Becerra. Thank you for being here today. I appreciate you coming before the committee. To start off, as a Secretary of Health and Human Services, can you define for this committee what is a man?
You're looking at one.
Great. So you are a man. I like that. Can you tell me, can men get pregnant?
Unless you know something I don't, I think the answer is pretty obvious.
What is that answer, sir?
I'm asking you, is there something you know that I don't know that would say that a man...
Well, I'm asking what you know. Can men get pregnant?
I'm not aware of it.
Okay. Well, Mr. Secretary, materials coming from your department, you've referred to mothers as birthing persons, replacing that title with...
Are mothers not persons?
Mothers are persons, but it seems to be more inclusive, like you're trying to include another gender in that.
I'm all about inclusion, Congresswoman.
There you go. Well, you know, just as a mother of 4 boys, I'm not necessarily offended at that. I am a person, but it's just unscientific and absurd.
How so?
To include men in that. If you're going to be inclusive, if you're going to be inclusive in birthing persons, yes.
Well, but it seems to me that you're trying to define the term.
Reclaiming my time. Can men get pregnant? So then we don't need to include them in this. Mothers are mothers. Moving forward, Mr. Secretary, I want to read for you from a document from your office, the Office of Population Affairs. It says in here, and I quote, "Gender-affirming care encompasses many facets of healthcare needs and support. It has been shown to increase positive outcomes for transgender and non-binary children." Mr. Secretary, what is a transgender child?
A child in America is a child in America, and I hope you and I can love that child just as much as we
Can you
love our own
define what a
children.
transgender child is?
That's a child in America, and it's an American citizen child who needs the services and love just the way any other child does.
Mr. Secretary, do you believe that a child is capable of making life-altering decisions to maim themselves?
So let me just say to you that I don't agree with your premise, but what I will say to you is children know much about themselves, and with the help of their...
Do you believe that children are capable of making the decision to self-mutilate?
Again, I don't necessarily accept the
Well,
premise of your
Mr. Secretary,
question.
I mean, you have gender-affirming care for young people, so this is something that you
I don't
have looked
equate
over.
gender-affirming care to mutilation. So if that's where you're going, then you're not going to get the answer you want.
So, Mr. Secretary here, can you tell me if there have been mastectomies, mastectomies, penectomies, or hysterectomies on children?
Well,
And have taxpayers funded that?
so I could probably use the help of my wife, who's an OBGYN, who could talk more, or maybe Dr. Burgess could help us out here.
For gender-affirming care, to be included in that?
I'm sorry, pose the question one more time, please.
In this gender-affirming care, Mr. Secretary, have there been tax dollars put forward to fund mastectomies, penectomies, and hysterectomies for sex reassignment purposes for minors with gender dysphoria?
So Americans are entitled to receive health care services. If they are entitled to receive any of the services that you just mentioned, then it would be against the law for us to try to deny them that care.
So for the record, you favor HHS's funding being able for sex reassignment, for surgeries on minors?
I will do everything I can to defend any American, including children, whether or not they fit the categories you have mentioned or not, and if they talk about gender-affirming care, I am there to protect the rights of any American.
Mr. Secretary, I want to turn to a different document. Your office released this gender-affirming care is trauma-informed care. In this document, you clearly state that gender-affirming care includes puberty blockers, hormones, and surgeries for minor children. You go on to assure parents that there is no scientifically sound reason to doubt hormones and surgeries are helpful to minor children. You also discuss this in a document that the potential for removing children from their parents is on the table if they're not providing gender-affirming care. Mr. Secretary, do you think that parents who believe in 2 genders only should have their children removed from them?
Secretary, Mr. Secretary, you can answer or respond in writing. Her time has expired.
I can respond very quickly. Congresswoman, I believe in supporting and protecting transgender youth. I believe that they, along with their parents and their caregivers, will make the best decisions. And I would really urge that politicians like you stay out of their business.
Professor Bridges, you said several times, you've used a phrase, I want to make sure I understand what you mean by it. You've referred to people with a capacity for pregnancy. Would that be women?
Many women, cis women, have the capacity for pregnancy. Many cis women do not have the capacity for pregnancy. There are also trans men who are capable of pregnancy, as well as non-binary people who are capable of pregnancy.
So this isn't really a women's rights issue.
We can recognize that this impacts women while also recognizing that it impacts other groups. Those things are not mutually exclusive, Senator Hawley.
Oh, so your view is that the core of this right then is about what?
So I want to recognize that your line of questioning is transphobic, and it opens up trans people to violence by not recognizing that.
Wow, you're saying that I'm opening up people to violence by asking whether or not women are the folks who can have pregnancies?
So I want to note that 1 out of 5 transgender persons have attempted suicide. So I think it's important
because of my line of questioning? So we can't talk about it?
Because denying that trans people exist and pretending not to know that they exist
I'm
is
denying that
dangerous.
trans people exist by asking you if you're talking about women having pregnancies?
Do you believe that men can get pregnant?
No, I don't think women can get
So you are
pregnant.
denying that trans people exist?
And that leads to violence? Is this how you run your classroom? Are students allowed to question you?
Absolutely.
Or are they also treated like this, where
No,
they're told
allowed
that they're
to question.
opening up people to violence?
We have a good
by
time in my
questioning?
class. You should join.
Oh, I bet.
You might learn a lot.
Wow, I would learn a lot. I've learned a lot just in this exchange.
Absolutely.
Extraordinary.
All right, here's Senator Hawley with reaction to that fiery exchange. Senator, I guess you're transphobic and you're, according to this professor, opening up trans people to violence by not recognizing them. At no time during that exchange did I see you didn't acknowledge that there are people that are transgender.
Here is the modern Democrat Party today, Sean. It is that you have to say that men can get pregnant, and if you don't say it, then you are a bigot and you are responsible for violence. I mean, that is the party line. Let's not forget who invited this witness. She was there as a Democrat witness. You didn't see a single Democrat disagree with that. In fact, they're all over social media applauding her and saying, oh, that's exactly right. It's not exactly right. It's exactly crazy, which is why voters are running screaming away from the Democrat Party. This is craziness. And I tell you, Sean, they are so out of touch with America. It's just, you can't even make this stuff up.
All right, so when she says to you and asks you a question, I guess offering you a test, do you believe that men can get pregnant? And your answer was, no, I don't think men can get pregnant. That led her to state that that means that you deny the existence of trans people. Okay, so if she's saying that somebody was biologically born a woman, that now considers themselves a man, you acknowledge some people do that, and some people go through whatever surgery they have. But there's no biologically born male that I know of, and I like to follow the science that I'm aware of, that would be capable of, as a biological man, of bearing a child. Is that not a fact?
I think it's a fact, Sean, and you know what? But for today's Democrats and Democrat leaders, it's not only not a fact, it is religion to them that you affirm that men can get pregnant, and if you don't say it, then you are responsible for violence. I mean, this is their line. By the way, Sean, these are the same people, the same Democrat leaders who want to force young women to compete against biological men in girls' sports. I mean, now we know why. If for all the parents out there, like, why in the world do all of these Democrats want to eliminate girls' sports? Now you know why. They don't believe there is any such thing as a woman. Not really, and they think that if a biological man wants to claim to be a woman, hey, that's fine, and we all have to accept it, or else we're bigoted and violent. It's just crazy.